Hello, and welcome to episode 2 on my series on vintage technology companies and their lost media. Last episode had a lot of concrete info and history, but now we're getting into more vague topics that need more outreach to get the full story. Today we'll be discussing Edutronics Systems International, an educational film producer for coding and computer lessons in the 70s. This company first came to my attention and many others when Technology Connections released his Sound on Film video on Christmas of 2022. There, one of the films he debuted had an interesting animated style, which he would later go on to release in full on his second channel. This film, critical program rating, is now over 130,000 views. It's a pretty timeless discussion on the readability of code, where 3 characters and a narrator discuss how to fix an unstructured section of code over the course of 17 minutes. I highly recommend you pause the video and go watch it now if you haven't seen it.
So we can concentrate on the what rather than the how. That way, we only have to think about the smallest possible area at a time.
Which is hard enough for me.
Don't apologize. Nobody uses his brain more than necessary.
Now what's interesting is that it's only part 1. Part 2 is completely lost. So what else can we look at? Well, Periscope Film has 2 other Edutronics films in its archive. In fact, it's the first 2 ever made by the company in 1969. These don't follow a storyline, but still have interesting visuals and are fun to watch.
Computers are increasingly being used more as tools of management and less as mere clerical labor-saving devices.
There's also 2 1972 films which have footage of the narrator.
This is the first in a series of lessons on JCL, the job control language for OS 360.
So how many are left to be found? Well, we have 5 so far, so maybe 10 or 20 to go? No. Actually, we're missing, get this, 435 lost films. Edutronics was making multiple films a month from 1969 to 1983. 14 years of films completely lost. Now, thankfully, we have every single film named and dated thanks to the copyright records. I compiled a complete list of them on the Archive of Vintage Robotics and Technology Companies wiki in order. Each series of films going over a topic also came with lesson workbooks and other supplementary material. The lectures themselves delved into coding concepts, management, data analysis, the IBM System 360, OSVS, and other hardware. The company also expanded into other territories and held offices in London, Paris, and Madrid. This means there's also an unknown number of translated French and Spanish versions. So what's the rundown of this company? Well, it was founded by 3 former IBM employees in 1968. The company's signature style would be branded ACE, for Animated Computer Education. They would offload production to many animation houses in the US, such as Disney, Hanna-Barbera, Animation Services Limited, and more. The company attempted to go public in 1969, but was instead bought by a New York publishing house. They then kept making films for the next decade, releasing on 16mm, U-matic, and Super 8 tapes. In 1978, the company would be bought by Mc.Graw Hill, and 6 years later, in 1983, the company would abruptly stop making films. And that's really all we know so far. Edutronics services were sold to most major companies, colleges, and government agencies at the time, but they got very little press coverage outside of advertisement. So we have 435 films to track down, probably 100 or so worksheets, a few books, and who knows what else. In my searches so far, I've managed to track down an old eBay listing for the direct access chaining and bucket indexing film, and I've also discovered a museum that holds all 6 parts of the Essentials of Fortran course. There's still no signs of any workbooks or system guides though. If you have any Edutronics findings or know anyone who worked there, feel free to email me or post your findings on the Archive of Vintage Robotics and Technology Companies wiki. If we find anything new, I'll be sure to do a part 2 to this video. If you want to check out more of my content and get exclusive behind-the-scenes work, check out my Patreon. I work on 3D models and video games alongside this video series, so there's lots on there for you to enjoy. Thank you to all my patrons for your support, and I'll see you next time.